everyone. This is Knowledge is Power, and I'm your host, Wanda Miller. My guest today is someone that's been here before. This is Lindsay, and I have to do a disclosure here, too, that Lindsay and I are friends from way back. Lindsay was on the first show when we did the stigma of mental illness, and today bless you, Ace. Today we're going to talk about we're going to follow up. Last week we had Aurora, who's a probation officer in Adams County, and she works with mental health people that are suffering from mental illness. And so we're going to just kind of continue that, and we're going to look at, Lindsay's going to talk a little bit about her experience going through mental health court then, and some of the other challenges that she's faced with having mental health issue and then dealing with the criminal justice system as well. But before we do that, I want to give out my Rusty Nail and Golden Hammer Award, and also give you an update on a couple of things. First of all, of course, we have the email address, which is kempowered@gmail.com. And, I've been trying to get Blair Hagelgans on the show. And for those of you who may not know the story of Blair, Blair is a young woman who is a student at your college. She's a public relations major, and she has epilepsy, and she has some other issues, but she looks fine. So she has what would be called an invisible illness, that when you look at the person, they look like they're perfectly healthy, but she's not. She has some challenges in her life, and those challenges warranted her getting a service dog, and the service dog's name is Creed, and she waited several years to get this dog. So anyway, Blair had Creed at your college, and she started getting bullied. And she was bullied for the sole reason that she had an invisible illness and she didn't look disabled, so why does she have a service dog? And then there were questions about, well, is she just making this illness up so that she can have her pet dog? And no, Creed's not a pet. Creed is a service dog. He's a working dog. And yes, Blair does have issues. She has challenges. And I got hold of Blair. Blair finally contacted me on Monday. She does want to be on the show, but it may be a while until she's able to. She had surgery. She was scheduled to have surgery yesterday. We hope that went well for her. When she contacted me, she apologized for not getting back, and I thought that was so sweet of her, because she should be concentrating on her problems, on getting better, on her recovery. And so our thoughts and prayers are with you, Blair. I hope you're doing well. And I told her, as long as I can do the show, if they don't run me out on a rail for some of the things that I say about some of our community leaders, or they boot me out and shut the door behind me and lock it, I will be here. So she's welcome to come back whenever she can. The other update is from Lara Greenberg, who a lot of you may know. Lara is a reporter on News 21. Her father has Alzheimer's, and she has done a lot of work with the Alzheimer's Association. I gave, and Blair as well, both Blair and Lara got Golden Hammers the other week for the good works that they're doing. Lara has done stories on her father. She's raised probably over $7,000 so far for Alzheimer's, so she's doing a lot of good stuff out there. And she's just another example of a really strong, courageous young woman who is trying to make a difference in the world. I was nice enough to invite me to a fundraiser breakfast the other week, and I went, of course, and I got a chance to meet her and talk to her a little bit. And I actually got a card today from Lara, and this is what she wrote to me. She said, "Dear Wanda, thank you so much for being my guest and hearing me speak at the Reason to Hope breakfast. It was so nice to finally put a face to a name. Thank you for reaching out to me after the story on my dad aired. I'm glad to know it resonated with so many people. And thank you for all you do to raise awareness in the area. Also, thank you for the nice award on your cable access show. Thank you for your continued support, information, and interest, Lara." And Lara, thank you so much for the really nice card. That was really sweet of you. And one of the great perks of going to that breakfast was next week we're going to have a guest on who I actually have known Bobby Emanuel for a while, lost touch with her. She runs a organization called Senior Helpers, I'm getting my senior services confused. She runs Senior Helpers, and it's an in-home caregiving organization, and she's going to be on next week, and so we're going to talk about what she does. And the other really exciting guest that is going to be on is, his name is Mark, Meadowcroft. Mark is Dr. Mark Meadowcroft. Dr. Mark is he works with Alzheimer's. He does really really highbrow science and research studies that are a little bit above my head, but hopefully he really wants to come on the show, and so hopefully I can get him to bring it down to a level where the lay people can understand it, because the stuff that he's doing is really great, and they're making more and more strides every day and coming closer to finding a cure for Alzheimer's, or at least finding better ways to control it so that people can live longer with it better, before they really become incapacitated with it. So, those are a couple of things. And the other really interesting guest that I just got confirmation today is Representative Patty Kim is going to be on the show July 7th. And this is wonderful. I've been wanting to get Representative Kim on for a while. She's been doing a lot of work with legislation that's designed to reform the criminal justice system, because so many people have these little summary offenses, because especially things like shoplifting. In Pennsylvania, shoplifting, you have a summary. Even though it's a ticket, it stays on your record. So you can have this thing for years and years. It really something that may have just been, it might have been a stunt you played as a college student, or it might have been some slip up, or sometimes crap happens and people do things that they normally wouldn't do, and they should, in my opinion, if they make an effort to redeem themselves and go on to try to be productive citizens, why should they be punished their entire life? The criminal justice system is set up entirely for punishment. It's not forgiving, and Representative Kim is trying to change that. So looking forward to having her on the show. So I'm going to give out my rusty nail, and Lindsay's going to help me with this, because today I'm going to do basically what I did last week, because last week I gave Donald Trump the rusty nail and the stinky skunk, because there just isn't enough awards for some of the stupidity that comes out of these people's mouths, in my opinion. Again, you might disagree with me, but my opinion. So today, we're going to give the rusty nail and also the stinky skunk to Senator Scott Wagner. And it goes to Senator Scott Wagner for putting politics before people, not the other way around. It should be people before politics, but for some reason Senator Wagner keeps doing it reverse. For those of you who don't know, in the 95th legislative district, Democrat Representative Kevin Schreiber is being challenged by Republican Joel Sears. Now, Joel Sears says his slogan is "A new voice for York." Well, yeah, I agree. We do need a new voice for York. We definitely need a new voice for York, but I don't necessarily know if this is the right voice. And I think maybe with a little tweaking, some of the people that we have, Kevin, there's some things that happen that I'm not too happy about, but and I've been very outspoken to the Democratic Party about it, and they've been very kind. They've been willing to listen, willing to help. I haven't felt like anyone has shut me down because I said something negative about one of their candidates. So I have faith that things can get better. It's just sometimes you have to point out the mistakes to people. So anyway, Joel Sears he's president of Fleet Technologies, which is a software design and consulting firm. He was a member of York Suburban School Board. He talks a lot about school funding. And the biggie here is he's being financed, or in large part financed by Scott Wagner. Now, I have an issue with that, too, and not just with Republicans, but also with Democrats. When you have one candidate really financing another, there's a lot of conflict of interest that can take place, and I'm not sure if that's always a good thing. But, as far as Scott Wagner is concerned, here's another example, just like Stan Saylor, another example of maybe someone who needs to rethink their occupation. Because Scott Wagner is not a friend of education. He over and over again has said that there's a myth about schools not being funded, that's all a lie. Last year we had the infamous him renting a helicopter and taking media up and flying over schools with tennis courts and then saying that, well, look, those schools have tennis courts, so PA schools are fine. We have a school in the city that has a swimming pool that hasn't been used in years, but that school's far from being fine. And he also flew over some of the wealthiest schools. He seems to ignore the poor school districts. And some of the things that come out of his mouth are really not, in my opinion, again, they're not appropriate for a man in his position to be saying. For example, one of the quotes was, and this was about Governor Wolf, and rather or not you like Governor Wolf, he's governor, and that and there should be some level of respect there. And his comment was, we had him, meaning Governor Wolf, down on the floor with our foot on his throat, and we let him up. Next time we won't let him up. That's so inappropriate. I don't even know where to begin with that. And this is the reason why we're having such an issue with the budget. We had it last year. We're going to have it again this year. These people need to start getting along and working and getting this budget thing hashed out and start helping the Pennsylvanian people, because rather or not they realize it, we put them in office, we can boot them out. So they need to start getting their acts together and start acting like the professionals that they're supposed to be, and getting on the stick here and getting some funding hashed out. We're going to talk about mental health care. Mental health care has been drastically slashed. I just went to the budget, the York County budget planning meeting the other week. And Steve Warren, who's director of MHIDD, was showing these graphs. And you can see this steep decline from, okay, here was this funding. Now every year it's boom, 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 boom to almost nothing. You cannot have a healthy community, society, country, state, whatever, without healthy people. You cannot have healthy people if you don't have the services to make them healthy. Mental health is such an important thing. It's not just, it's all inclusive. It's a holistic thing. If you aren't feeling well mentally, and there's the stigma that's involved in that, and people don't get help because of the stigma. And then when they do try to get help, then they have to go on a waiting list. In fact, I talked to my therapist today about having someone asked me if they could get in to see her. Well, she has a waiting list. She has a waiting list now. And why does she have a waiting list? Lack of funding. It's not that they couldn't get the money. The money isn't there to get. So they're trying to think of things out of the box. They're trying to think of all kinds of fundraisers to get money. That's sad. It's unacceptable. It's just honestly unacceptable. And I think it's getting to the point where we as a state, as a county, as a city, we need to start really raising our voices and tell these people what we think, and in a respectful way. I mean, don't bash, don't swear at them, be in a respectful way, but start the dialogue and definitely let them know that this is not right. This is not cool. You need to get funding for us because we need to have this. Bell provides housing. We have a shortage of housing in the city. We need more affordable housing. People can't get stabilized if they don't have stable housing. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Lindsay has housing, I have housing. So it's, these things are all important. And we need someone in touch with the people. We need someone in touch with the problem. And, I've said already, I have criticized Mayor Bracey, and I have criticized Representative Schreiber for not always being completely in touch. But, when it comes down to it, at least, when I look at Mayor Bracey, and I gave her a rusty nail and a gold hammer one week because, she didn't know, and I think that she should know that, I don't understand why you wouldn't know, why you wouldn't know what's going on in your city, but, why she wouldn't know that there are homeless youth in the city. But, on the flip side of that, she's trying to start programs. So, you got to give them credit where credit is due. So, yeah, so again, stinky skunk goes to Senator Scott Wagner, and, the nastiness is just, I don't understand it. I don't understand the nastiness, and it needs to stop. So, nothing's gonna come of it. Now, we're going to go on to the a Gold Hammer Award. And the Gold Hammer Award this week is going to, I've talked a lot about guardianship abuse, and we had the show with Charlene Peterson, who was the guest, who had also been a victim of guardianship abuse, and I went through it with my mom. And I'm going to give the Golden Hammer Award to two elder advocates, and actually the one where I'm talking with her, trying to arrange that she can come on time that she can come on the show as well. Mary Witten and Cos Witten Scaife. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. These two women went out of their way to visit a guardianship/nursing home abuse victim. The woman's name is Genevieve Bush. Genevieve is in a nursing home. That'll be on the screen. It's Park Lane at Bellingham, 1615 East Boot Road, Chester, PA 19380, and the phone there is 484-887-2209. I would encourage anyone out there who cares about seniors, cares about this issue, just cares about the human experience in general, to reach out to this woman, reach out to this nursing home, and tell them it's not okay to treat people the way they're being treated. It's not okay to isolate an elder. It's not okay to not give them the nursing care that they need. And I want to read something to you. Hopefully I have it here on my phone and it didn't kick out. All right. This is actually there's a Facebook page called Free Genevieve from Guardianship, and her daughter Mary Bush and I have corresponded for a while. It's one of those cases where you'll see, victims of guardianship abuse are like victims of domestic violence or rape or child molestation, sexual abuse. There's just certain horrific experiences and atrocities that people come together. You can be from completely different backgrounds, but you have that common thread, and that's really what binds you to these people. And this is what has happened in my life. I found a whole group of people that are working hard to try to reform. And nobody's saying that guardianship is across the board evil, because it can be very good. And I've spoken to a local guardian who seems to care a great deal. He does the financials. He has a friend and his partner who is a social worker and goes out and visits the wards. And he seems to have it all together. So there are really good ones out there, but because of the way the system's set up, because there's not a lot of oversight, there's so many reasons why it's not working. There's also question if the Pennsylvania Older Adult Protective Services Act is even constitutional. I believe there's a lot of issues with stigma, with aging, and that's another reason why these things are allowed to go on without much intervention. But suffice it to say that Genevieve Bush is in an abusive guardianship, and I'm just going to read a post. This is a post that was written by her daughter, and this was yesterday at 12:51 p.m. She says, "Thank you to advocates Mary Witten and Cos Witten Scaife, who visited Genevieve on Sunday, June 19, 2016. Cos went into Park Lane at Bellingham, here in Westchester, and here is her details of her visit. Thank you for making my mother smile. On Sunday, June 19, 2016, I visited Genevieve Bush. I was really nervous as I knew she was in an abusive guardianship. I shouldn't have to feel so much anxiety as I did. I was so nervous. I was dropped off at the front. I went into the nursing home and saw Genevieve eating with the others. I asked the staff person if I could visit her, and they said she was done eating, so they rolled her out into the lobby area by the TV. I sat down with Genevieve and read her a card. It was from her daughter, and it read, 'I love you, Mom,' and it had a smiley face on it. Then my phone rang. I answered it. I was able to hold the phone up to Genevieve's ear for her to hear her daughter's voice. At first, Genevieve did not know who I was, nor seemed excited to see me. She did not care about the card. Once the phone was to her ear, she lit up. She reached out and grabbed the card and started to smile. She also looked as if she would cry. She then reached out and held my hand. I spoke to her daughter on the phone and told her how her mom was reacting, and then I put the phone back up to her ear, and her mom was noticeably happy. I got 2 pictures of her mom holding the card. Her mom definitely appeared to be happy at the sound of her daughter's voice on the phone. She continued to hold my hand and gave me a hug. Feeling nervous about being there, I left. I would say my total visit was about 10 to 15 minutes. When I look back on this, I suffered severe anxiety, and all I was doing was bringing an older woman a card that said, 'I love you, Mom.' Why I should have been made to feel so nervous is so wrong. I am unaware of how I am aware of how predatory abusive guardianships work, and no one should ever feel as if they can't visit a nursing home. Shame on Chester County for what you have done to the Bush family. And there is a picture of, you're not going to be able to see it, it's too small to show on the camera, but if you go to the Free Genevieve from Guardianship Facebook page, you can see it. And, I will just make, a comment on this. When I was going through the guardianship with my mom, the nursing home, which is Colonial Manor, and one of the worst nursing homes in the county, I will also add, and that is not, that's just not me being griping about it. It's actual fact. It's on the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. They've had citation after citation after citation, and why the York County Area on Aging seems to think it's okay to keep putting older adults there is beyond me, as well as the solicitor for the York County Area on Aging, Scott Beaverson. I have never seen one sliver of compassion from these people. It is an atrocity what happens. It should not happen. It's happening because, for one thing, we do have this stigma of, when you're old, you're decrepit, you're incompetent, you're demented, and that's not necessarily true. It happens because the judges are not educated. It happens because the Area on Aging representatives are not educated, they're not trained, and they're extraordinarily resistant to any kind of training that's offered them. I know that for a fact. I would like to see the Older Adult Protective Services Act rewritten. I have been in contact with someone who wants to talk to me about this, so hopefully, some good will come of that as well. But no one should lose everything because some act gives power to an agency with untrained individuals that have no clue as to what they're doing when they walk in and they look at someone with dementia or Alzheimer's. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I would encourage everyone to call your representatives, call the Auditor General, Eugene DePasquale. Raise your voices for the justice for Genevieve and all the victims of guardianship abuse. The Older Adult Protective Services Act is, there's a lot of question whether or not it's unconstitutional. It needs to be looked at. It needs to be amended. And I'm also going to call for the resignation and investigation of Denise Getchen, who is one of the big players in the Department of Aging. I had experience with her. She seems to be a common thread in all these issues. Also very resistant to change, also very resistant to any kind of criticism, and other members of the Department of Aging. So everyone, please look at that Facebook page. It'll break your heart, but it'll also give you a lot of information. The other great page to look at is Shenanigans in the Montgomery County, PA Courthouse. That is an excellent Facebook page. I recommend it to everyone. It not only shows, it shows documentation of these guardianships, it also takes all the pieces apart for you and takes it down to a level that you'll understand. Everything's documented. And I've corresponded with the administrator over there. They will not put anything on that's not documented. So it's a very creditable Facebook page. So that's my golden hammer and rusty nail for this week. And now I'm going to get over here with my buddy Lindsay, and we're going to talk about the criminalization of the mentally ill. And one of the things that I did bring along, and Lindsay went through the mental health court.
I did.
She did. So this is, I don't remember who printed this off for me, but a while back somebody printed me this, and this is all of this is the criteria for mental health court. So Lindsay's going to talk about this, and it's quite a process to go through, I understand. So, okay, Lindsay, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you tell us about your experiences.
First of all, I have to say that I was one of the worst of the worst. I went to 5 rehabs, and I still drank. I had such bad depression that I couldn't find myself. I couldn't find my purpose in life. I would drink so much to take away the pain, because when you're drunk, you don't feel any pain. I was arrested 9 times. I lost everything that I had. I lost my husband. I lost my business. I lost a brand new car. It only had 9,000 miles on it. I lost a townhouse, apartment after apartment. And finally, I came across the public defender, and he suggested a thing called mental health court. Well, mental health court saved my life. Mental health court is probably the hardest thing I ever did in my life. It's very, very strict. You have to see probation once a week. You have to explain to the judge what you've done for the week, and you also have to have a counselor and another part of the team. So you see all these different people every single week, and they keep you hopping. I remember the judge gave me 2 weeks to find a job, and I did find one, and she said, if you lose this job, you'll go straight to jail. And so you're really on your toes. But mental health court actually saved my life. My probation officer got me my disability. It really is one of the most wonderful women I ever met. And I said if she was ever a counselor, I would go to her for the rest of my life. She put me in Bell socialization, and then I got a hold of the caseworker I have now, and she sent me up with my apartment, which I had for 4 years, and it's called Bell Supported Housing. If anyone is at their limit in life, if anyone thinks that they can't make it, and I know if I can make it, anybody can. If anyone has that lost hope and they think they can't make it, you need to go to mental health court.
Yeah. But you have to have not everyone can go to mental health court.
Well,
it's only
you can't go if you're a murderer, of course.
Okay.
Can't go if you're schizophrenic.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have somewhat of your right mind.
Okay.
I can't say enough about it, really.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and some of the criteria here too. I mean, I understand that you have to have. I think is it for misdemeanor? Is it just for misdemeanor and felony?
Well, see, I never got a felony. Mine was, I got 2 drunken drivings.
Okay. Were they summaries? Do you remember? Because I was under the impression that they couldn't do, if you had a summary, that they didn't do summaries.
Oh, okay. I said it wrong. I meant felony.
Okay. Yeah.
I never had a felony. Yeah, the drunken drivers were misdemeanors.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it here. But the offenses, it says it says here, once an offender completes mental health court, offenses may either be reduced in gradation or dismissed. This will be determined by prior record and nature of immediate offenses. And and one thing we should talk a little bit too is the fact that one of the reasons why so many people with mental health issues are now ending up in prison is because there was the deinstitutionalization of mental health institutions. It used to be that we had state institutions where people could go if they had severe pervasive mental illness, and they could get treatment. Now, not all of them were great, but it was still they were there. They were there if someone needed that. And at some, this has been throughout the years, they slowly started to close them because there was the thought of we need to mainstream people into the community, and that doesn't always necessarily work, because sometimes people need more supports than they can get in just the community. Sometimes maybe they haven't been diagnosed correctly. Maybe they're not on the right meds. Maybe they stopped taking meds. There's all kinds of factors that go into someone who has a mental health issue, and it's a severe mental health issue. So there was a real disservice done to a lot of people when these institutions these state hospitals were shut down, because there's no place to go. And then, again, as I was talking about in the beginning of the show, we're losing funding. I mean, we're bleeding funding here. There's the supports that would be there, and you have to. And Lindsay and I were talking about this earlier today. Bless you.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. We don't. A lot people that never had a mental health issue don't necessarily understand how hard it is to deal with, because like Lindsay was telling me, and I agree with her. You can be so depressed, you just don't care. You just can't get it together, and it's not that you're lazy. It's not that you're a deadbeat. It has nothing to do with that. It's an illness, but it's in your brain. It's a chemical imbalance many times. Also, a lot of people have PTSD that is being misdiagnosed as all kinds of things because PTSD manifests in many different ways. So, someone, and I know this from having PTSD, you don't care. And a lot of times, like Lindsay's talking about the drinking, thank goodness, I've never had a substance abuse problem, but I understand that you don't, when you have trauma or you have some of these other disorders, you don't necessarily, you don't feel things. Like, you don't feel joy, you don't feel happiness. So you try to do whatever you can to feel. And that's, one of the things that I learned when I went to I had a couple inpatient stays that I put myself in there because I knew I was suicidal. And I remember talking to people that they were cutters. And anyone who's never seen a cutter, I can tell you, the first time that I actually saw someone who cut close up and personal, I had no idea what to say. I had no idea that someone could do this. I mean, you saw were scars the whole way up and cross-hatched because they cut constantly. And I remember one young woman telling me that she cut to feel, because the myth is that cutters are trying to commit suicide, but really it's kind of the opposite, because cutters are trying to feel, so that's why they cut. People that are suicidal really are trying not to feel. They want the pain to end, and they don't know how else to end it. So there's that kind of strange, there's those beliefs that people have and those misperceptions that people have of mental illness. And one of the things that I've seen over and over again is also there's a lot of people. Now, Lindsay, did you were diagnosed with your mental illness, or did you drink first?
Drank first.
You drank first.
I didn't get diagnosed probably till I was about 40.
Why did you drink? Because you were
I felt terrible. I slept for 14 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember finding a picture of myself. I can't remember which child it was. I remember I was laying on the sofa, and I had my baby right there, and I had my hand out, and I could not wake up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I another thing I said, the disclosure is that Lindsay and I do know each other. We've known each other. We met each other, my God, it's been years, probably like 20 years ago or so that we met each other. My mom and I used to come to York to get our hair done, and our hairdresser left, and Lindsay had taken over. And so she started doing our hair, and that's how I met Lindsay. So, when Lindsay tells you that she's been through an amazing journey, I can confirm that, because I've known Lindsay. I knew Lindsay back when she had her business and everything was really going well, and it just shows how horrible, how devastating a mental health issue can be. And it's a shame that we have people that don't understand that and make fun of it, or just tell you to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's not going to happen, folks. We can't just pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. That's like one of the, you say that to someone with active mental illness, and you're probably going to get slapped, or they're going to want to slap you, because it just doesn't happen that way. It's a hard, long road and I don't necessarily like some of the language that goes along with mental health. Like, I don't really necessarily like recovery, because I feel that I'm on a journey. Because I know recovery is because I was never a substance abuse user. So never had substance abuse issues, I should say. So I'm really not so much in recovery as I am in management. I had to learn how to manage, and then get trying to think of the word. I had a psychiatrist that had remission. That's the word he used, remission. And I like that. I like that concept of, okay, you learn to manage. It's just like if you have cancer, you try to get that managed and controlled, and then you go into remission. And the longer you're in remission, the more it's unlikely you're going to go back and fall out and go back. And this is why, now, have you been, I'm going to ask you a personal thing. Have you been in any crisis or inpatient in a while?
Around 5 years ago, I went to York Hospital.
Okay, so
I don't know what happened, but I just quit eating. And I bet I lost 40 pounds, and I just shook all the time. And I had a great therapist, and she called an ambulance on me at her office.
mhm. So that was that before Bell, or was that when you were involved in Bell?
No, I was at Madison House then. That was before Bell.
So you were okay. So, and I'm not going to say that Bell is a cure-all, but I will. We got to give Bell a lot of credit.
Mm-hmm.
And Bell does get bashed at times. There's a lot of misconceptions with Bell. I remember when I was first looking for housing and someone suggested Bell. And I remember I was at a meeting actually, and after the person suggested Bell, somebody else came up to me and kind of whispered in my ear, "You don't want to go to Bell because those people are they use the old word retarded. Those people are retarded. We don't say retarded anymore. We say IDD, just so everyone knows. It's MHIDD. But that's what I was told. That was the perception. I remember speaking every year. Bell puts on an art show, and then they also have a candlelight vigil for suicide and mental health. And I spoke one year. I think it was the first year that I had moved into the city. I spoke, and I talked about Bell. And I remember a woman coming up to me afterwards and saying that she has been very resistant to go to Bell because of these misconceptions and perceptions of what it really is. And Bell it's a mental health service. They offer mental health services. They can help you with housing. They can help you with finding a therapist. It wasn't until I went to Bell that I had several staff members suggest to me that what I have is trauma, because I was diagnosed with depression, anxiety, ADD, all kinds of stuff. And they said to me over and over again, "No, you have trauma. You need to see a therapist skilled in trauma." And I did, and I have had a couple of times where I haven't felt so good, but I now have the tools, the supports, and the skills that I know what to do for myself when I'm having those thoughts or I start to go into crisis. So I haven't been, I think, the last time I was in crisis was, right before I started with Bell back in the fall of 2012.
That's good.
So both of us, 5 years for Lindsay, about 4 years for me. So, and we're not the only ones that have been helped by Bell. And then just the housing piece is a big help, because if you don't have that stability, you can't work on anything else. Did you have housing when you were going through mental health court, or were you at the rehab?
I was at the recovery house, and then they put me in Bell, and I got I got a Bell apartment, and then you could only stay there 2 years at those. And then my caseworker that I have now, she took me out and she helped me get my own apartment, but I got to pick it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that is the way they work. That they in Bell, the way that they handle the housing is you start out with a group home, and that's with a bunch of other people where they teach you skills. Now, in some cases, like in my case, I really didn't need that support, but I was going to be put in a group home because that was about the time that Governor Corbett decided it would be a neat idea to eliminate all the cash assistance for single people. So I had no income. A lot of people had no income. So that was gumming up the housing for Bell again, because and other agencies, because a lot of these support housings, 30% of your income goes towards your housing. So that was a big issue. So I was going to start in a group home, never ended up in a group home, ended up being jumped to what they call the mod apartment, which is 2 people, and you have a roommate, and you're in there for so long, and then they move you to your own apartment, which is still connected with Bell, and then after they see that you can handle that, then they put you out into the big world, and you get like in my case, I have supported housing. I'm happy with my supported housing because it's subsidized by HUD. The building that I'm in, even if I lose my disability or any income, something devastating happens, I'll still be able to stay there as long as I keep my electric on. So those are the kind of programs that we need. And I really, if people that are watching take nothing else away from the day, I want you just to take this one point away, is that, when welfare and people that use welfare, people that use supported housing, people that use Bell, people that use food stamps, you don't know their story. You don't know what happened to them. You don't know why they're there. Don't judge them. Don't be judgmental. Don't just go to the old stereotype of, oh, well, they're just bums, or they don't want to work, or they don't want to, whatever the belief may be, because 9 times out of 10 it may not be true. There are people that twist the system around. Lindsay and I have talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people don't. A lot of people really need it. A lot of people, I wouldn't be here. I can honestly say, and I will say it on camera, so it's, and we're taping this, so it's going to be forever. I would be dead if I didn't have Bell. If Bell if Bell hadn't intervened, if I hadn't gotten the supports that I got, I would be dead, because I was ready to check out. Many times I was ready to check out. When you lose everything, when your life is just a mess, when you've lost all control, when you have PTSD, when everything that could go wrong is going wrong, you can't just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It doesn't work that way. I wish it did, but it doesn't. And I came very close. I had a plan. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew when I was going to do it. I knew how I was going to do it. And I'm a very meticulous person, and I'm a very good planner, and it would have worked. Let's just put it that way. There wouldn't have been any coming back unless they would have intervened quickly. I knew exactly what I needed to do to achieve the goal. So I really, when I say that Bell and Lindsay, and I know other Bell clients that have said when they say that Bell saved their lives, they're not exaggerating. They're not just joking about it. It's true. They really did.
It is true.
Because you went to mental health. How did you get involved with Bell? You went to mental health court.
I was in mental health court, and I got out of jail after 6 months, and I was court ordered to go to a recovery house. Well, my probation officer at that time, I was in mental health court then when I went to the recovery house, and my probation officer at that time said, "You've outgrown the recovery house, we're moving you to Bell." So then that's how I went.
Yeah, and that's great, because I remember seeing her. I think about the time that I got my permanent housing. I remember seeing Lindsay, because I hadn't seen her in a long time. We've ran into each other off and on throughout the years, but I hadn't seen her in a long time, and I was kind of surprised that she was there. So a lot of what she's telling you right now, I don't even know. So, I just want to say to Lindsay, I want to thank you for being on. I want to thank you for your courage.
Thanks.
Because, like I said, we had another person that was going to come, and then last minute something came up and they couldn't make it. So, Lindsay and I are here to carry the show. And I'm going to read like some of here's the 10 key components of treatment courts. And it's element 1 is plan and administration. Element 2 is target population. Element 3 is timely participation, identification, linkage to services. And this is a good one, because it says participants are identified, referred, and accepted into mental health court and linked to community-based service providers as quickly as possible. And that's another good point, because if you have someone who is having issues, and another good resource is there's a gentleman named Pete Early. He used to be an investigative journalist for the Washington Post, I believe, but he wrote a book called Crazy. And he also was at York, that was several years ago. This is when Rose Abergini was still the director of NAMI, which is the National Alliance of Mental Illness. And he talked about he wrote that book, Crazy, because his son is schizophrenic. And he went through the whole criminal justice system and the mental health system with his son, and he saw, like most of us that have gone through it, that it is, in many ways, it is crazy, because there's not enough funding, there's not understanding, there's the whole stigma issue to be fought. His son ended up breaking into someone's home, and I think he was sitting in the bathtub or something, because he was schizophrenic. He was having a psychotic break, basically. and he got arrested, and he would have had a felony, which would have affected him the rest of his life. And somehow, I forget exactly how, because he somehow got that, they got that pleaded down to a misdemeanor. But, the criminal justice system is really, in many ways, not very kind to people. And sometimes I understand someone like someone who's a psychopath that just murders for the fun of it, or someone who's a sexual predator. There are instances where I agree completely that somebody should maybe just be put away somewhere safe, that they're not out in the mainstream public and so they can't hurt anyone. But I think a lot of cases, those of us that have mental illness, and you'll see this a lot, and we've talked about this in shows before, that you'll have an issue, but either you don't recognize that. What was your case, Lindsay? Did you not recognize it, or were you afraid to get help?
See, all my life, my mother told me something was wrong with me.
Okay.
I was the one that always got in trouble. I remember one time my sister slammed her hand in a car door, and she went and ran to my mom and said I did it. I was always the bad one. And I just felt like a lot of alcoholics say, they felt like they never fit in. So drinking sort of helps you and makes you fit in, and people like you, and it's just horrible to drink. It's horrible.
Mm-hmm. And so there was something underlying there, though. There was something, you didn't feel good about yourself. You were told that there was something wrong with you. There was that could possibly be, and I'm not. And please, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not licensed. But we decided to do this show kind of as a dialogue and just as like a conversation. And I've been in the mental health community so long that sometimes I don't mean to diagnose people, but I kind of recognize the signs. And I especially trauma, because I've learned through, and I'm going to give Dr. Sherry Kim another plug. And Dr. Sherry Kim, really, just off the track here quickly, if anyone can donate money to Dr. Sherry Kim's agency, she runs a nonprofit. She has done so much for this community. Funding is just so hard to get right now. She's done all kinds of fundraisers. I think she still has a GoFundMe account. Trying to figure out how else to raise money for her, because this woman's just phenomenal. She's done so much for the community. I appreciate, she's really helped me a lot. She's helped me. I go attend her DBT group at her agency, and I see a therapist at her agency. But we've also collaborated on some other things. So if you can donate anything to her, and she should have a GoFundMe account up yet. I know she also had some kind of agreement where there's something that you can do on Amazon. Nonprofits can do with Amazon, that part of the proceeds from an Amazon purchase goes towards the nonprofit. So if anybody can do anything to help her, that would just be great, because she works within mental health court. She works in the court system. She does evaluations. She works with people that have severe trauma. She's just done so much, and she does it on a shoestring. So, this is, learning about the trauma. And, I talk to people, and they're telling me that they've been diagnosed with this, and this, and then they start telling me about, they were raped, or they had some other kind of horrific thing happen to them. And I have to wonder, is it really this, and this, or is the core thing trauma? Because a lot of times it is, the core thing is trauma. But like Lindsay's saying, a lot of people with mental health issues do end up getting involved in substance abuse, because it's called self-medication. It's self-medication. You feel better, and it can also be, it doesn't necessarily have to be a drug. It can be promiscuous sex. It can be overspending. It can be overeating. Gambling. Yeah, it can be any number of things. I mean, we all automatically put our minds to, drug abuse or alcohol abuse, but there's so many ways that you can do self-harm, not just by cutting or taking pills, but and prescription drug abuse is pretty bad too. So there's a lot of things that are going on. So One of the other things I have here is, let's see, element 4 is terms of participation promote public safety and are clear, individualized, and the least restrictive necessary to ensure treatment engagement. They also strive to minimize the impact of the charges on the participants' criminal records, and they support a positive legal outcome for participants who successfully complete the program. And that's one of the reasons they started the treatment courts too, is so that people that... Did you get yours?
Well, see, mine was really weird because I got sentenced before I was accepted into the court, and my charges still stand.
Okay.
Because I was already sentenced. Now, if I would have went into the court first, and then I would have been sentenced, everything would have been dropped. So mine is kind of a little bit weird, but it was so long ago, I don't think it counts hardly anymore.
Yeah, that is a little bit strange because the first time I've heard that.
Yeah.
Because I know our guest last week, Aurora Hollenbaugh, who is parole and probation for mental health in Adams County. Stop laughing at me, Ace. I'm gonna but just an offshoot really quick. Ace is in acting camp now, and he's going to be singing, and so I'm going to have him on the show someday to sing. He's someday we're going to have a guest that doesn't show. We know that's going to happen, and so our go-to plan is we're going to order pizza. Ace is going to be entertainment, and I'm just going to sit here and let it all happen. So anyway, back to what we were talking about. Aurora was talking about in Adams County, and that's how they do it in Adams County. Actually, the person is already sentenced, and then goes into, and it's not called mental health court. I forget what it was, but it's a whole different kind of procedure. But I think you're the first person I talked to that, because usually the way it works is the mental health court is designed to help lessen those charges, like if something was, or get rid of them completely if you complete it, because it's really tough. It's like 18 months, I believe.
I was in 19 months.
Okay, I think it's in 18 months. It says here, participants in the program will be expected to honor an approximate 18-month commitment. The program consists of 3 phases. Phase 1 begins with weekly appointments with a probation officer and or resource coordinator, along with a weekly court appearance. Offenders that have demonstrated compliance with their treatment plans for approximately 6 months will be promoted to the next phase. With each successive phase, offenders are monitored least frequently and less intensely. So long as they continue to be in compliance with their treatment plan, sanctions are utilized in the event of noncompliance. So how did they develop a treatment plan for you?
Well, what happened to me is when I got real sick with that nervous breakdown.
Okay.
And I don't agree with this part of it. When I got sick and went, it was called CDR. I can't remember exactly what it's.
Yeah, CDR.
That's closed now. Anyway, I was there 15 days. And if you get sick in any way whatsoever, get hit by a car, have a heart attack whatsoever, you are set back. And you have to start over. So that's why mine took a little longer.
Yeah. And that doesn't really seem fair, because if someone has and I don't know, that just seems to be sort of an issue too with mental health. I know one of the things, and this is one of the things that I've talked to Representative Schreiber's office about, and continue to talk to them about, is amending the animal cruelty statutes. Because as it is now, there's a lot of people that have mental health issues, and if you have a mental health issue, say you have a mental health issue and you go into crisis, okay? Well, you go into crisis, at least in York County, and I know this has happened numerous times, and I've had some personal experience with it that I won't go into, but the humane officer at our SPCA in York has a reputation for not being the kindest person to those with mental illness. I've seen this. I was at the CDR too. I saw this with another patient there and the other thing that happens, back up a minute, what happens when you go into crisis? Okay, when you go into crisis, like Lindsay went into crisis with her therapist sent her. I checked myself in, but sometimes people are a hazard to them. You might go into the therapist's office and you say you're really depressed and you feel suicidal, and the therapist feels that you're not safe to yourself or you're safe to others. And they'll ask you first, were you willing to check yourself in somewhere? And that, at that point, it's best to say yes, you're willing to do it, because otherwise the state has given, the therapists, police officers, there is it's a process called 302, where you can be forcibly put into treatment or put into a crisis if you seem to be a danger to yourself or to others. Now, it's not, there's a lot of variables with that too, and that's been ballied around as when they've been trying to change that. It's still not, it's still not a perfect system, but a lot of times people will be sent directly from a therapist office or whatever into the crisis center, and when that happens, you just go. You don't have the luxury of getting clothes. You don't have the luxury of making sure that you have whatever things in order you want to have in order. You just go. You're sent, and then you're put and you're locked down. You can't leave. And so this happens to people if they have a pet. If they go into crisis, they're sent to the center. They're put in, especially if they're 302, they're put in a lockdown. They can't go anywhere. They can't get to their pet. Well, if they don't have anybody or they don't have a system, which is another reason why you need to have a mental health directive, and we don't talk about in a different show. I'll have to do a show on that one. But they'll take your animals, they'll remove your animals, and 9 times out of 10, they won't give you the benefit of the doubt that they will with someone with a physical ailment. The animals will end up being put, they'll be put out for adoption, or you'll get cited for neglect or abandonment when you didn't really abandon these animals. You were forced into a treatment. You had an illness. You had a mental health illness, and I have seen this over and over and over again, where people with mental illnesses are treated differently. Especially, as I said, by the York County SPCA and their humane officer. She's a big offender of this, because I've seen this happen. I've talked to, I've witnessed it with my own 2 eyes. I've had issues with her myself and with my mental illness and going inpatient. There's no compassion. There's no willingness to help. There's just this hard-nosed, well, you walked away. No, we didn't walk away. And it goes back to that stigma of, you need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. What did you say to me earlier? Put your makeup on.
My mother used to tell me, go take a shower and put some makeup on and you'll be all right.
Yeah. And that doesn't work. Did it ever work for you?
On. You don't want to put makeup on.
No, and you do get to the point where your mind is so tired that you don't want to do things like, you don't want to take a shower, you don't want to take care of yourself, you don't want to interact with people, you just want to isolate. And that's why programs like Bell and funding is so important, because those are the interventions that we have. We don't have a lot of supports like people do with physical ailments.
Like we said about cancer.
Yeah. If you have cancer, think about it. If you're talking to someone who had cancer or diabetes or any number of physical ailments, would you tell them, well, just suck it up, just put up with the pain, it's okay, just get on with your life. If you die, you die. That's the way the disease goes. I don't think anybody with a heart would say something like that.
Mm.
So, and that's sort of the other reason. That's sort of how the CIT, I believe, started too, with this crisis intervention team training for the police officers. So police officers understand. We talked about that a little bit last week, so I won't go into that too much. But
I'm also involved in that. I used to call it train the trainers, where you actually train the police how to talk to people that don't feel good. I've been training the police now, I think, about 3 years.
Yeah. So, well, we're coming down on time, I think. Okay, Ace is looking at me, so we're coming down on time. Well, I want to thank Lindsay for coming, and I guess that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. for being here and listening to us, because next time hopefully we'll be a little more prepared and we won't have like a last minute. We'll have somebody
Well,
last.
that's okay,
Yeah,
though.
yeah. But we made it through. So I want to thank everybody for viewing, and remember, knowledge is power. So.